The reason why throwing this into the subdivision surface just rounded everything too much is because we don't have enough edge cuts on this geometry, so everything is being sort of rounded literally, but of course we want to make this here. So I can just go to the Platonic and highlight everything, then right click, and if I open up the subdivide, let's do sort of one subdivision at a time just to see the effects of that. So if I click OK, we'll see everything has been subdivided at least one time. Now if I re-enable the subdivision surface, the shape of this is a bit closer to what we want, but it's still too rounded. So let's subdivide once more. And once again, getting closer, and it looks like we would have to do this one more time before we get something like the old example. The problem with this, of course, is it's just too much geometry. There is actually a way more economical way, or the proper way you would do this instead. So let's see what that other way is. If I press Ctrl Z just to go back to the original, let's go to growth shading so I can tell when I have gotten there. And on the Platonic, I'm going to just make a copy in case we need to go back to this earlier version. I am going to go to Edges mode and press Ctrl A to select all of the edges. If we just subdivide the edges alone, it saves us a lot of segments and polygons because we don't need to subdivide, like the flat surfaces, for example. So let's right click and bevel, because this bevel tool also works in this edges mode, not just the polygon mode alone. So if I just click here and start the operation, you can see it's creating these extra edge cuts on our edges. So if I just type in, let's say 0.2 as the offset, if I now re-enable the subdivision surface, you can see we are already very close, or we are pretty much there now actually. It doesn't take much at all to do that subdivision properly. And the difference is that this is a much better way of spreading our polygons and only subdividing where we need to, whereas over here this was just subdivided way too much. This is a much better shape, and the advantages of this, of course, it's just easier to manipulate moving forward, and it's a lighter object in terms of how much it's going to take up, how much memory it's going to take up in the scene. So if we were cloning this many times, you would be better off cloning a less dense mesh. Let's undo and look at a couple of other things we can do with this bevel. So in the edges mode, once again, set to 0.2. If I apply, I can also subdivide. So, if I put in 1 in here, it's going to create an extra edge in between. If I do 2, that's going to be rounded even further. So the effect of doing this, by the way, is to just sharpen those corners when we do drop this back into the subdivision surface. So now you see that rounding we had here, because we've thrown so many edge cuts, those edges will be sharper than before, and you get a completely different style and look. So if you want something that's more hard edged, that's what you would do there. You would just add more cuts when you do the bevel. I think you don't need to add, like 3. I think even like an extra 1 would do the job. And there you go. That's the difference between one subdivision and just the original 0 that we had before. At 0, we still get the rounding in the right areas and then the sharpened edges elsewhere. I will show you one final bevel mode, which is changing this to solid. If I just click and start moving, It may be helpful to do a side-by-side comparison for your own sake, so you see the way the edge flow is applied is going to be different in this solid mode versus chamfer. So actually I can switch between the two and you can see the difference. Now with the solid mode, you don't get any subdivision at all. It's already going to be sharp just because of how that geometry is being shaped. So anyway, let's go back to the normal chamfer mode and set it to 0.2 and call it a day there. This is the final subdivided shape.